Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, everyone can hear me okay. My name is Shannon, and I'm the Program and Research Coordinator at the Orangeville Library. And I'm also joined on the call by my colleague Raghav, who is our Makerspace Specialist. We are both thrilled to have the opportunity to learn alongside you as we hear from two experts in the field of child development and mental health, Dr. Michelle Ferdella and Dr. Stephanie Lavoie. Directors of WonderTree, a pediatric hub that supports youth and families, Dr. Michelle and Dr. Stephanie bring a wealth of knowledge to everything they do, and they certainly do a lot. From psychological assessments to therapy, parent coaching, occupational speech and language therapy, school supports, and more. And of course, hosting educational and accessible workshops like the one we have the pleasure of hosting this evening. Not only are they experts, but they have built a multidisciplinary team of smart, kind, and compassionate service providers to help us along on our journey, our parenting journey, which I have to say is a tough one, a beautiful one, but a tough one. In today's world, growing up is inseparable from growing up online. From social media to gaming to endless access to content, the digital landscape presents both exciting opportunities and serious challenges for children and teens and their parents. Tonight's talk will be a practical and insightful presentation designed to support you in understanding how to guide your children through the digital world with confidence, clarity, and care. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Michelle and Dr. Stephanie. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us tonight. This is a topic that is something we're very passionate about and something that we think is really important for parents to become acquainted with and educate themselves on. So we're really excited to see that there were so many people who were wanting to learn about this. And we're happy to share the slides and the information from this presentation afterwards as well, too.
Yeah, we got really excited and kept adding and adding and adding to it. So we suspect there's more than an hour of content. Yes. So like Stephanie's saying, we'll send you the slides in case we don't get to everything. And we might run through some stuff really quick as well, just so that we can get to more content. So this is a quote we like to start with, and this kind of applies to anything in relation to child safety. So whether we're talking about keeping our kids safe from sexual abuse or online safety, it all starts with this idea of, as parents, are we willing to feel a bit uncomfortable so that our child doesn't have to? And so that's kind of the working premise, that a lot of the work that we do around child safety starts with us as parents. So we're going to start with this little video. Some of you may have seen it. It's trending right now. So I know it was all over my personal socials. So Steph will get it. So put your volume on a little higher if you want to hear it. Is there a way to expand it?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Hey, kiddo. It's about time for bed, okay?
Okay.
Remember, there's a box in the corner over there with all the pornographic material that's ever been made in the world, even the really weird stuff that could scar you for life. I'm trusting you not to look in there, okay?
Okay.
Feelings are for losers.
Oh, and this guy's gonna be in your corner all night, just randomly spewing.
We just lost
We're gonna be standing there talking about you all night.
Sorry.
Just randomly spewing out hateful
back now.
things. Just ignore them, okay? While I'm thinking of it, there's an order form on your desk where you can purchase illegal drugs. The mean girls from your school are gonna be standing there talking about you all night. And this Russian hacker's gonna keep asking for your password.
I'm not a hacker. Amazon customer service.
Just need you to ignore them, okay?
Love you, buddy. We ask too much of our kids when we give them a smartphone. Let's change the norm. Together.
Maybe we go around the room and share social security numbers.
Join the movement at smartphonefreechildhoodus.com.
I'll get it anyway.
Okay. So it's meant to be funny, but it actually does touch on this idea that our kids have the world at their fingertips, and what they have access to is not great information, photography, videos. A lot of the information and what people have access to of them is unsafe. So I like it, even though it's uncomfortable to even watch that, even though it's comedic. So when we take a step back, what we want to often talk to parents about is just why do we think our kids like social media? And we can think about why we might have started to use social media ourselves personally, but there's a lot of benefits and positives to it. And this is also broadly tech. It's not just about social media. So it does provide connection with family and friends. Kids can video chat, self-expression, creativity. You can post photos, things that you love, the art that you made. You can meet people who have shared interests. There's lots of ways to have fun. There's games, there's apps, there's memes, there's all sorts of stuff that people like on technology, belonging, community, really getting validation and feedback. So we've kind of trained our brains to check how many likes we get, check how many shares we get. So there's a lot of positive reinforcement that kids and adults are receiving on technology and social media. And then learning and discovery is really pointing out the fact that we learn a lot on technology. We're learning tips. We're seeing things on Instagram. I downloaded a recipe, right? There's lots of stuff that you can actually get out of social media and technology. And so that's contributing to why we use it. So this is applicable to us, applicable to our kids. And so I don't know who looks at this and can hear the sound of MSN Messenger from when we were kids, or I know the beep from the ICQ when we used to use that. But it's basically taken what we had when we were younger and amplified it by 1,000, right? There's these platforms that are much more able to garner interest and keep interest because there's people who are experts in the psychology of keeping our kids online and keeping our kids entertained. So it's definitely shifted quite a bit. So we are the generation that our kids are watching. So that's important. You can click the next one. So that's important to know. So this is an exercise we can we don't have to do it in this moment, but you might want to do it for yourself. And this is where you go on your own phone as the adult in the house. Maybe you have a partner in the home and they can check this as well. But how much time are you spending on your phone? How much time are you spending on apps, on socials apps, on messages? What are you doing on your phone? And the reason for this is because our kids are watching us. And so from a modeling perspective, if we're thinking about technology, whether it's being on our phone or gaming, because there's a lot of homes where one of the adults is a gamer as well, we need to monitor our use and model our use in front of our kids, because our use can get out of hand quite quickly. And I say that as somebody who's on their phone all the time.
It's all the little small times too, right? Think of how often you just pick it up to check something, or a message comes through and you pause what you're doing to check it right away. That's all teaching our kids that the moment something comes in, the moment that ding happens. And so it's not always just sitting and watching something on your phone. It's all those little small moments of where you're modeling that behavior.
Yeah. And so if you look at your phone and you check the number of pickups, that stat in itself is terrifying. So I would encourage everybody, you probably have an idea of how many hours you're on the phone, but check for the number of pickups. That's the amount of times we literally go like this and put it down. And it is significant. And our kids watch every time we do that. So what are the basics? So the basics is that we know the internet and other devices and tech have benefits. So we know it gives our kids access to knowledge, learning, opportunities for sharing and creating and making connection. But there's the inherent risks that come with it, including inappropriate or harmful content. A lot of us think of that right away. We know, okay, we don't want our kid to watch pornography, but it's more than that and beyond that. Unsafe communication with strangers, and there's also privacy violations and data misuse. Okay, so it really matters that we have these conversations. It really matters that we're paying attention to our kids' tech use and how our kids are accessing tech in a safe way, because they are so connected and tech is everywhere. They're on computers at school, their friends have phones, they have phones, they're on gaming systems, they're on servers, they're on things like Discord.
It's integrated into their classrooms, right?
Absolutely.
It's Google Classrooms, Teams Classrooms. It's setting up things like Prodigy Math, Knowledge Hook. All of these pieces are integrated into their learning.
Which are often great things, but we don't always know, depending on what device, what kind of safeguards are in place. So our kids need guidance. They need to be taught how to manage these devices, apps, whatever it is that they're on, what to do when there is harmful content. And we need to be taking a role in helping them develop those skills and navigate things safely. So what are some of the dangers? You've probably thought of a lot of these. People can be outed online around different things, watching harmful content. There's a lot of things that have gone around in terms of challenges that kids are trying to recreate from influencers online, which end up being dangerous. There's misinformation, impersonating. I've had kids who are impersonating either with new accounts or their photos are being altered. Online bullying, financial scams, grooming, technology facilitated sexual abuse. And then there's other residual impacts that can happen in terms of their relationships, not, engaging in their schoolwork, all sorts of things.
I can take over.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we have some data about some recent studies that have come out about the impact of technology on our kiddos. We have quite a few slides on this, and like I said, we'll send them out afterwards. So I'm going to do my best to try to condense the information. And essentially what the research tells us is that there is an association between technology use and social media use and mental health concerns, and that there's also associations with physical concerns, such as things like sedentary lifestyles, not getting out as much, increased problems with body image and the impacts that come on health as a result of concerns with body image. And then there's also behavioral concerns and social emotional concerns related to the cyberbullying, online grooming, all of these pieces. Social media users in particular are at more online risks than their peers. So there's a lot of technology use out there, but specifically social media places an increased risk with particularly those kiddos or youth that are more digitally competent. So the more competent or skilled they are with digital technology, actually the more at risk they may be.
And you can imagine why, right? It's easier for those kids to access information. They're more savvy to delete things and get around blocks and stuff like that.
And this is really just some information to share actually just how common it is for youth who are online to come across information that is inappropriate for them to be viewing. So 1 in 3 boys between the ages of 9 to 12 experience online sexual interactions of some kind. About 60% of boys are reporting that they're being bullied or made to feel uncomfortable online. 2 in 3 kids who use YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat will have unwanted sexual experience before the time they turn 18. That's huge. And 50% of the victims of online sexual exploitation are between the ages of 12 to 15. So these are teenagers, which are often having access to a lot of this social media platforms. And a good portion of them will experience some either increased risk of bullying or victimization. There's also a large majority of the incidents of luring. So this is that sort of like grooming, luring behavior that can happen that starts online. And again, if they're for individuals that are part of marginalized or populations where they're already at increased risk or vulnerable, they're at even further risk of concerns online. Again, just really talking about some, again, more updated research about how normalized some of these difficulties become in youth. That the fact that these harms are happening online actually become a normal part of their experience is quite concerning. And there's often a significant gap between what youth are doing online and are happening to them and their understanding of the relevant laws that protect them or that might guide their behavior. And they're also unaware of then where to go once they need help or support. There's also significant impacts on social media use or technology use on the impacts on sleep. And we know that sleep is really an important foundation for a lot of other mental health concerns. And this really is, closely tied to technology use, particularly related to bedtime hygiene routines.
I can go
back to you.
Yeah, we don't have a plan for this, by the way. We just bounce between the two of us. So what do we need to do as parents? Okay, and so we're going to highlight in this talk, we don't have answers for every single thing of what you have to do. What we're really doing is highlighting all the things you need to pay attention to and all the things you need to support your kid with preparing for and knowing what to do if they come across certain information. So you need to know what your child is doing online. Did you know that they could delete texts? Do you know that that might have happened for your kiddo? Are you checking their texts? Are you looking for apps that actually hide information? So there are There's apps that can look like a calculator and it's actually not a calculator. So there's a lot of hidden apps that can exist on cell phones. There are certain workarounds to these things that we can talk about, but there isn't a broad solution because there's different devices with different workarounds. But just even knowing that these things exist is really helpful. So we need to be using parental controls and privacy settings. We need to be keeping devices in shared spaces as much as possible. Kids not having a cell phone, for example, in their room. This will depend on age. I should preface that. Everything does depend on age, but having a cell phone unmonitored in a bedroom, we really want to be mindful of that happening. We want to build our knowledge as parents and our kids' knowledge around digital safety. And that's kind of the biggest part of all of this is us knowing more and then our kids knowing more in terms of how they can keep themselves safe.
So part of this as parents really becomes us familiarizing ourselves with all the potential risks and all the ways in which things that might seem okay can actually go wrong. So becoming more familiar with some of the hidden meanings behind emojis and what things actually might be meaning when you're seeing kids send emojis back and forth with each other.
And they are not the same as when we were, I mean, we didn't really use emojis when we were young, but emojis have basically become their own form of language, where if you'll look at the other slide, when you get the slide deck, you would have no idea that some of those things might mean,
like the certain combination of them.
Yeah, it actually has meaning, and kids are using them to have conversations so their parents don't understand, essentially. And these are also happening not just in text, but in comments on things like Instagram and Snapchat. They're actually using these types of meaningful emojis to communicate with somebody. AI chatbots.
This is a concerning one.
This is a big one. So AI is a newer technology in the I mean, for us, it's new. Kids are growing up with this right now, right? So our kids are growing up in a world that we didn't. And AI is being used in various ways that are very helpful, right? So there's ways of using AI to support a kiddo with academics or self-advocacy and all that. But AI is being used by kids for various things. So it's being used to spread misinformation, harmful content. It's being used to alter photos. So I've had kiddos where their face is superimposed on a naked body. That's being done on AI. They're using AI chatbots to be conversations with a sexual partner. So pretend you're my boyfriend. And very quickly, a lot of these AI chatbots are becoming quite inappropriate quite quickly.
Even if it's not starting off as like boyfriend, it's like they'll go on to characters where they want to speak to a character they enjoy or like a particular individual, and AI is pretending to be that individual. And it's quite scary how quickly it can actually and often turns to sexual content.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely monitoring anything going on with AI. So from a prevention standpoint, it's early education, frequent conversations with our kids about what they're doing on tech, what they're accessing, what their friends are accessing, right? These open conversations. We're really encouraging honesty and no secrets in households. So we talk about secrets, surprises, but no secrets. And that's a broad safety term. You might see that if you look into sexual abuse prevention. We really emphasize no secrets in the home. We want to make sure we're doing supervision, monitoring, safety checks, and putting those safeguards in place, and just like being in the know and delaying tech use when we can.
Yeah. One of the most important pieces as we talk about wanting them to know that they can come to you is remembering our core parenting skills. And we're going to use this when it comes to technology. We have to be calm, open, and educated so that when they come to us and they report that something's happened, that we're not scaring them with our reaction and making it less likely that they're going to come to us again. We want to have firm boundaries, but also provide space for warmth, connection, and discussing what feelings they might be having as a result of these things. You really need to be your kid's safety zone when it comes to all things, but certainly definitely technology as one of those important pieces. They're going to make a mistake. At some point, your child will make a mistake. Something is going to happen online. We hope it's not a big thing, but something's going to happen. And we want them to know that whenever that mistake happens, that they can come to you. It's also really important that we are educated and having these conversations with our kids, because what we know from all the research is that kids will get information from online. They're going to get information from peers. That information is not always going to be accurate. but that if parents are in active communication with their kids, that helps moderate the impact of the influence of the information that kids are getting. So parents sharing information can help curb or change what kids know. It helps keep them safe when they might be getting misinformation.
And this is a general thing. The more information our kids have in general, the safer they are. So whether we're talking about sexual abuse prevention or online prevention, we want our kids to have more information to stay safe. Oh, this is a big one. So is the answer no social media or technology? And we live in a world that is a tech world, right? It's not ideal to say you can't use anything forever, right? Until you're 18, you're not going on a phone, an iPad, a computer, or anything. We can't really say that and do that. That's not the world our kids are growing up in. So we need to be mindful of the limitations that we put in place, mindful of the ages that we allow our children to do certain things. And also if we're using it as a punishment tactic, we really say it's short term if we are going to take away tech. It's not a real fix in the long run, because what that means if there was an issue is there's a gap in knowledge. So we really need to address those gaps versus just like a punishment approach. So let's take it as skill building, right? That it comes down to that.
This is a really important distinction. How do we supervise? So we keep talking about increased monitoring, making sure you're supervising. I want to be very clear that there's a distinction between supervising and spying. We are not, or sneaking, right? We're not hiding this from our kids. We are being very clear, open, and transparent about the fact that we will be supervising their use of technology and how we will be supervising that. So if our only method of checking on what they're doing is waiting for them to fall asleep and then sneaking their device and going on it, that is not going to lead to open, honest conversations. This needs to be clear as to who owns the device, who owns access to that device, and what they can do on the device, and how you will be monitoring that. We want to make sure that there's parental controls on devices, but we also need to make sure that we're aware of the ways around controls. There's ways that our kids will find ways around these controls, and there's also ways that individuals who want to put inappropriate content out there will find ways around the controls. So one of the examples I always give of this is YouTube, kids YouTube. Often parents will allow kids to have the kids YouTube version or the app, thinking that it's safe because the content on kids YouTube is meant only for minors. There is a lot of content on there that actually might initially appear to be safe for kids, but then quickly changes. So for example, it looks like you're watching a Peppa Pig episode that has then been reanimated to have one of the characters stabbing another character, to include this violent content or sexual content. And so if you're a parent, you're just walking by quickly on kids' YouTube, or your kid clicks on it, it looks like it's gonna be a cartoon. It looks like something they're very familiar with, but it's actually been reanimated to have some potentially really harmful content there. And it doesn't get picked up necessarily by kids' YouTube or flagged initially. So there's a lot of ways around those parental controls. So we do have to be really careful about assuming that because the app was made for kids, that it is inherently safe.
Another point around that is when you download an app, if the app is a kid's app, it might be safe, but if it has ads, those ads might not be safe. And so a lot of I've had so many parents say, I downloaded this game. It looks like a great game, and then an ad popped up, and there was a sex act happening in the ad, for example. And so even if you're downloading a game that might seem safe, there could be ads that pop up that are unsafe. So these are all things we want to be keeping in mind. Are there ads? I think this is also covered on another slide, but are there ads in this app? And so what's the age restriction on the app, and are there ads, and is there a chat function in the app where other people can talk to your child? So these are all things to be mindful of. So the what if game, this is one thing we mention here, and I love this game just like as a general parenting strategy. So what would happen if you were on your phone and an ad popped up and there was a naked person on that ad? What would you do, right? Or what would you do if your friend sent you a picture and they weren't wearing clothes? And so we actually present kiddos with concrete situations to see what their response would be. And half the time your kid's going to look at you with like a deer in headlights and say, I don't know what I would do. And that's data. That's data that tells you there's a gap here that we need to fill so our kid would know what to do if that were to happen.
Yeah.
Oop, did I go the wrong way? See, I should not be allowed to touch the... Okay, so I think we talked a bit about this stuff, right? So kids might get on apps that don't. So this is actually more about your phone. A lot of this is actually about your phone. So you have to watch out on your phone. If you hand your phone to your kiddo and your personal phone does not have parental blocks on it, it's like that first commercial where you're handing them the world. So if you have personal photos, wink, wink, on your phone, everything like that should be hidden, password protected on your device, especially if you're the kind of parent who, which I've done this, you let your kids swipe through your photos, being aware that if you use certain apps yourself, like WhatsApp, it will download those photos from those conversations into your photo section of your phone. While your kid's on your phone, messages and notifications might pop up that might have sensitive content. They might read something that they shouldn't read. They could also send and delete texts if you give them your phone, right? So they could be texting somebody and then just delete it and you wouldn't actually know. So it's very important we don't actually give our child your own personal Apple ID and password, right? This opens up Pandora's box of them being able to download on your phone, and they would also then have the power, if you're linked, to download on their device. So you always need to supervise and use guided access. So if you don't know about guided access and you have an iPhone, definitely use that. This is more of a general website. So internetmatters.org actually is about a lot of different platforms and how you can put parental controls on those platforms. So this is a link that you can visit and it goes through all the different ones. It might depend on your device. I'm not sure how that would work, but it's a good website that gives you kind of the basics for all of those different things that you would be wanting to put parental controls on. And so these are images that I took on my own phone. So I don't have any safeguards in place on my phone. And I went on Apple Music and I typed in pornography or porn. I did one or the other. These are the things that popped up. And so if your kiddo has access to your Apple Music, again, that might seem innocuous, right? Like, oh, it's just Apple Music, it's just music. Apple Music has stuff like this. So it has erotica, it has moaning sounds, it has all sorts of stuff. And it also has videos. A lot of music videos are embedded, many of which are explicit and inappropriate for many kids. So even things that seem safe are not. So other places, you can go to the next slide, other places that aren't safe, right, without checking in or having any blocks on it, things like Spotify, things like Pinterest, you would be shocked at the amount of issues that I've heard about with Pinterest, right? There's also conversations, there's inappropriate categories of images. Apparently there's all kinds of stuff on Pinterest, podcasts, and just in general music videos as well. So being able to be on top of it means just checking what our kids are consuming, even on these somewhat safe platforms. Gaming's a big one. And so if you have a kiddo who's a gamer, some of the main things that come up in gaming is the chat function. Like the chat function is probably the biggest place where stuff is happening, I would say.
Chat function and then also worlds. Entering in worlds and places that people have created in games.
Yeah. And a lot of the worlds will have adults in them, right? So if you're in a certain game, if you're in, I know it's happened in Minecraft, right? Where a kiddo will join a game and there's other adults there and there's some inappropriate things that have been created.
Bathhouses.
All sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So knowing who your kid is playing with, what they have access to, and monitoring that. Because even if it is just their friends, it is really helpful to know what's happening in those chats as well. So if it is not monitored at all, there could be adults there, predators, people grooming them in the chat, trying to get their personal information. I've had several kids get catfished, thinking they're many young boys thinking they're talking to a young girl who lives in another country, right? And is getting to know them and they're building this connection and it's my girlfriend. Oh, no, it is probably a 40-year-old man in, I don't know, Alaska, right? So we really need to be monitoring because of all these things that are happening in gaming. So this is just a screenshot of how you can set up guided access. Guided access on the iPhone, I mentioned it earlier. It basically locks your kid into an app. So if I turn on Netflix Kids and I put on Gabby's Dollhouse and I put it into guided access, my kiddo cannot get out of that app to watch that show. So she can't get into my text messages, photos, get on the browser or anything like that. And it has a password, right? So again, it's an extra layer of safety. So this is another role that we play with our kids in online safety. So it's really important that as parents and adults, we think about what we're sharing before we share it, right? So oversharing personal details about our kids can put their safety at risk. You might have seen some of the warnings that came out from police officers recently about, we make those sheets on the first day of school. This is my kid's school. This is what grade they're in. This is their teacher. We're basically announcing all the ways that you can find our kid in public. So things like that are not recommended to do. But what's happening now as well is any photo that is shared, if it's public, there are people downloading them and again using AI to alter photos. It's really problematic. So we're really encouraging parents to be mindful about any information or photos that you are sharing regarding your kiddo. Okay, so following the rules. It's so hard to follow the rules, especially if you have a preteen, because you probably have a preteen who's saying, all my friends have Snapchat, all my friends have this, all my friends have that.
Everyone's playing Minecraft.
Everyone's doing this, yeah. And so these things do have age restrictions, right? I think you can go to the next slide anyways. So the reason why we have these age restrictions is because they're designed to say, kiddos' brains at this age are probably developed enough, it's questionable, but probably developed enough to handle this app and the responsibility that comes with it. And so a lot of them say, 13 plus. But in reality, about 86% of Canadian kids under 13 are at least on one platform that they shouldn't be. Okay. The other side of that reality is a good chunk of parents approved that, right? A good chunk of parents said, okay, I know you're not yet 13, but I'm going to let you have this app. So there are risks of ignoring age limits, right? So the number one risk is we're exposing our kids to predators early, and not just predators, but all the other stuff that Stephanie mentioned earlier around being vulnerable to bullying and seeing a lot of things about body image. Like there's so much. Can I call it garbage? Can I call it garbage out there that our kids are exposed to earlier when we get them on these platforms? We're giving them access to live streams that we cannot monitor. If somebody is on a live stream, that's gone afterwards, and you won't know what your kiddo saw. And DMs that they can delete, right? There's data collection being done on them without safeguards. And what I think is one of the most important ones is we're teaching them that age limits don't actually matter.
We're teaching them to lie.
We are teaching
online.
them to lie. Yes.
We're teaching them to lie, to do what they want or get what they want online.
Yeah. So we want our kids to think that following age limits is appropriate and important. And so when we are just accepting that, oh yeah, you can definitely do that despite the age limit, we're kind of teaching them that that's okay. So we're actually modeling going against these sort of baseline rules that exist with technology. So we talked a little bit about this, just that be aware that even if a game is age appropriate, the ads may not be appropriate that are being shown. And so a lot of parents will actually choose not to download any games that have ads for this reason or live chat. So you can just be very mindful as you're downloading games. Does this have a live chat, which you can't monitor? And does this have any ads that pop up because it could be inappropriate content? So there are some new safeguards that are coming out. So there's a new teen protection that's come out on Instagram, and my phone keeps trying to get me to set it up, but I don't have a teen, so I haven't set it up. But I did take this screenshot and this little video to show some of the things that it's saying this can do to protect kiddos. So it seems like there's higher safeguards and barriers from unknown people. I know how well it works in practice. I don't, right? I haven't utilized this, but it's good to know that more of these things are actually coming out, and that as parents, it seems like you'd have more supervision of your teen's account, which I think is really, really important. So if we're giving them access, can we make it supervised and safe? Okay, I feel like we've talked about most of this stuff already.
I think so.
Can go. So how do we educate ourselves? So there's a couple Facebook groups that we recommend parents to join. So Parenting with Technology in Canada, and then Parenting in a Tech World. Parenting in a Tech World is a busy Facebook group with lots of information. And it's also really scary and uncomfortable because you do get to see on a daily basis the scary things that are happening to kids online. So there's a lot of parents coming on and say, my kiddo just experienced sextortion, and now we have to go to police. Who do I go to? How do I report this. And so it's a wealth of information, but it's also like a stark reality to what's going on for a lot of parents. Parenting in a Tech World is an international group, but I think it's mostly US. Then there's some people that you can follow. So the SRO officer has some great content. I encourage you to go on the website for the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. Lots of free downloadable resources that you can use with kiddos to teach about online safety. At the end, if I have a sec, I can go. We probably could have had them, but they have some pamphlets that you can get for free, sent to your school, sent to your home, grades 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to high school. So some concrete downloads that you can work through with your kids. There's some safety guides for apps, and then there's some other socials that you can follow as well that we'll share as well. Okay. I think we talked about that already, that like it does start with you. Main point, Steph mentioned this before, you own the device. And so you have to decide what the rules are that are going to be in place for that phone or device, whatever it is. So you need to talk with your kids about consent, bullying, sharing of information, and hacking, the permanency, that's a hard word for me, of anything that is on the internet, any trails and footprints they leave, who are safe and tricky people, AI, fantasy friends, which is what you were mentioning with the characters and those social chatbots. Okay, so what specifically, do you want to do this one around? Sorry, I need a breath.
Yeah, go ahead.
Breathing.
So really, this is about what do we do when they get into an uncomfortable situation? What happens when, again, these mistakes happen? So we want them to come to us. We can try a few different things. One is tell it like it is, right? We're just going to tell them like it is. We're going to be very straightforward. This is also about helping them. Sorry, I'm like confusing our two slides here. This is about what we can tell them to help them get out of situations. So something uncomfortable starts happening online. They're in a chat, something's happening, and they need to get out of it. One is they're honest. I'm uncomfortable. I need to get out of here. Another one is helping them come up with a joke or a situation or a way to get out of it, or have an excuse that they can start to use to get out of the situation. We want to teach them that they can also ignore, that they do not have to respond to everything that is sent to them. If someone posts on their videos, if someone responds to them, if someone sends them a message, they are not obligated. They do not have to respond to that. We want them to stand their ground and then block content that is inappropriate, block individuals which are posting inappropriate things, and then we are going to report it.
So this is for the age range where they have the capacity to do this. I will say when it's kids who are younger, what we teach them to do is close it, not close the screen, but shut the device and walk away to tell an adult, right? So if we're really thinking of the younger kids, like a 6-year-old, we don't expect them to stand their ground, right? They need support to navigate those situations. They are meant to, if they see something inappropriate, you put the device down and go find an adult. So this will depend on the age of the kiddo that we're talking about.
And this is sort of leading into a story where I was confusing our two slides here. And this is teaching them when to get help and how to get help. So again, if we have taught them to come to us, if we have made ourselves a safe space, we want to make sure that they are aware they can go to us. We also want to make sure that they're aware of who else can they go to. Who else is in their safety network of people that they could report this to? Is it a teacher? Is it an aunt, an uncle, somebody else who they feel like they might be able to go to or feel comfortable going to? How can they reach that person? Do they need to call them? Do they need to find mom or dad in the house? How can they access that person, and who is that person? So they have options in terms of family members, school staff, trusted adults. And then there's also, again, as they get older and capacity increases, we can also teach them about things like cybertip.ca/report, where they can report online abuse or concerns. Needhelpnow.ca is, again, another helpful resource, or things like kids help phone. So there's also some online or phone access, ways that they can access support outside of trusted adults.
And you can access those as well, right? So you can go on cybertip.ca, you can go on Project Arachnid. You as the parent can also access those supports with your kiddo. Oh, group chats. Good old group chat. Group chats are are full-fledged right now with kids, whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's a group on Instagram Messenger. There are tons of group chats out there, and often we forget to monitor those because, it's just the friend group or whatever, but it's good to really take a peek and see what's going on in those conversations. There's a ton of notifications, so you might hear ding, 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 and that's the pressure. So our kids are feeling pressure to pick up the phone, engage, and be present in those conversations. They don't want to feel left out, right? Yeah. So that's where it's coming from. But there's issues in group chats. There's misunderstandings. Kids can feel like left out if they're not on their phone 24/7. It's really a space, too, where you can spread misinformation and spread content they're not supposed to be spreading. So, I'm just going to send this to my group chat. And then one kid in the group chat sends that to another group chat, and this is how data is just flying with these kids now, because they're all connected in these groups. It really is a normal part of growing up. Is it the best thing when this is how data is getting filtered? Not really.
I mean, really just think of the impulse control and regulation that kids and teenagers have. It's pretty minimal, right? That's where their brain is. In terms of their frontal lobes, they're not very well developed. They're still developing. They can make very impulsive decisions. And access to technology, group chats, all of these things allow those impulsive decisions to happen very quickly, and you can't take them back. It's not like they can send something to the group chat and it takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 days to get there. Yeah. This is something that they send, the thought occurs, they send it over, and there's no taking it back.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're watching for, we're really watching for online predators. Human trafficking is becoming a massive issue. It's been an issue in the schools that I've been. This is something in high school, particularly in high school, we're seeing this in Ontario. So what are predators doing online? They're using fake profiles and photos. They're really pretending to share interests with our kids. So, I'm really into this and you are too, let's be friends. They don't say it like that because that's not cool, but it's that idea. They offer gifts, they offer compliments. They're sending kids money, right? So kids, I don't know what the equivalent is here, but like Venmo, like that idea of sending money, and parents don't even know, right? So I've had parents say, I don't know, but my kid all of a sudden has this very expensive purse and they've been going shopping, and it's this stranger online who's actually been transferring money to an account, and the kid is then just using it online. They don't even have to go to a bank. The kiddo is figured out, and they're being groomed. They're really being groomed by somebody who's trying to build trust and give them money. Obviously with an end goal that is not appropriate, right?
There was actually a great article in the Hamilton Spectator about the perspective written from someone who had gone through human trafficking that started when she was a teenager. And one of the parts that she shared is part of what maintained this is that there's actually online communities for individuals in these situations where there's almost like a competition. And so on Instagram, on Snapchat, people are posting things of like the new expensive purse. If the person is essentially the human person who's trafficked them, bought them, where it's like the terms of daddy. Look what daddy bought me now. And then it's like, if you're good, if you listen to what they say, if you do what they're asking you, they buy you more expensive gifts. You post in this community, and then it becomes a competition again as to how you're being treated by these persons that are grooming you. So it does maintain that relationship and increases the person wanting to do more things to please these individuals to get that higher status online.
Absolutely. And then our kiddos might end up getting blackmailed, right? So this person has learned who they are, right? They end up figuring out who they are. The kiddos try and keep their private information. Eventually it leaks out. The predator figures out who they are. And we have had so many kids get blackmailed, right? If you don't do what I say, I'm going to tell your mom that you have Snapchat and she's not supposed to know. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to send that photo that you took of your breasts in your room to all of your friends at school. And that just brings kids further and further into dangerous situations because they feel like somebody has some content on them that's going to blackmail them. Okay, I'll send you more to help you be quiet and not share my information. So you actually have to talk to your kids about this risk, right? Because if we don't, they won't necessarily know how to manage it, right? So if anything like this happens to you, I'm your safe person that you can come to. We don't want secretive online use. If kiddos are hiding purchases, if kiddos are being very super protective of their phone, if you catch them deleting things, like these are some of the signs that this might be happening. Sudden mood swings. These are all things that you might start to think, I wonder if trafficking is going on, or sometimes an increase in sexualized sort of behaviors and wearing things that were purchased from a predator. Right? So I've heard that as well, where my daughter all of a sudden got more lingerie. A parent might say to me, and I didn't buy it for them. Where is all this coming from? And it's actually been somebody grooming them by purchasing these things. Okay, so pornography. Pornography is a big one. So many kids get exposed to it. I think the average age, was it 9 or 10, the recent research?
I think it was actually closer to 8 or 9.
8 or 9. Yeah. So some of the recent research is saying that kids, the average age of first exposure to pornographic content is about 8 or 9, which is very, very young. And that's not an age that they can comprehend the material, understand the implications of watching it. And we know that early and repeated exposure is really unhealthy for our kids in terms of their understanding of consent, their understanding of relationships. It's really not something we want them to be viewing. So we have to be very mindful around the pornography piece. We don't want to have shame in that conversation. There's some early books that you can use. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures is one of them. We also have a blog on teaching sex education to kiddos. And so we actually just talk about it, right? We don't pretend porn doesn't exist until they find it. We actually warn them that this exists and what to do
in a developmentally appropriate way.
Yes,
and some of these books will really help you find the language in terms of how you can do that.
Yeah. And we're not attaching shame to the conversation. We need them to feel safe that if they come and come across it, again, they will put that device down and come and find an adult.
And I want you to remember that this is also about them coming and talking to you, not just because of things they see on their devices.
Yes.
You may not give your child the device. That does not mean they're not going to school and a friend has a device.
I think we just lost connection there. Just 1 second.
Are we back?
You're cutting out and your image is frozen.
Oh dear.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we stop sharing and then reshare?
Okay.
That might help. But you can hear us okay?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. And maybe if you turn your camera on or off and on again.
Okay.
Are we back again?
Not your visual, but we can hear you well.
Okay.
Okay.
Can everyone see the slides okay?
No, we can just see your initials. Oh, it might be coming back. 1 second. Yep, the slide's back. We just don't have a visual on the two of you.
Okay. I mean, as beautiful as we are, and I know you guys don't want to see us, I think it's okay as long as you see the slides.
Yeah.
So what I
Sounds
just
good.
wanted to add to this, I think sometimes a moment of self-reflection is helpful. If you remember the first time you came across pornography, how old were you? Were you by yourself? Were you with a friend? Were you in the basement with nobody supervising you on the internet? And that's the kind of thing where I think it's important what Stephanie brought up. It's not necessarily your home computer. It could be anywhere. I've had kids access it at the library. And the library has filters and safeguards. I'm not saying you weren't in a library, okay? Let's just be very clear. But kids are very technologically savvy, right? And so it could be one tech savvy friend and they show all 20 kids that are with them at a birthday party, right? So we just have to be very mindful that our kids should be prepped because it's out of our control sometimes where that first exposure is going to happen. So we talk about it. So I don't know if we need to go over those. Okay, so in terms of alternatives, parents are often saying to us, what are some things we can use instead, right? So I don't feel my kiddo is ready for a smartphone. What can we do instead? So what's nice is there's more options in the States, but in Canada, we do have a few options for watches and phones that have a bit less tech on them, right? So kids can't just have free access to the internet. There's actually safeguards where perhaps they can only message their parent, or maybe there's only GPS that their parent can track them, screen time management, and much more controls. So before we give our kids the world at their fingertips, there are other alternatives that would still allow us to have access to them, to know they're safe, to have them message us. Parents are also starting to do things like getting a home line again, like to have a fully fledged, like what we used to have, a home phone, right? And the home phone is in somewhere in the house. That's a communal area, and kids can have access to that. And I've also heard the concept of the kitchen phone. So it's actually a cell phone that's shared between all the kids for when they have to go out. So it has all the safeguards on it. It isn't one kid's phone, but it's there in case they need to go out. And from a safety perspective, we want to have the ability for them to call. So there's a lot of different ways to work around this idea of alternatives. It would come down to, well, I think one is cost. These all have a different cost associated with them, and what's going to work best for your family's needs and your kids' needs and their age, right? And their developmental level, because it isn't just about age. We also work with a lot of neurodivergent kiddos. So it's not just age we think about, but developmentally, what is kiddo ready for in terms of what they have access to? Okay, so we have a blog that has this information from the presentation. We also have other blogs that talk about teaching sex ed to kids. That's actually a really popular one, and that goes over some book recommendations, websites. It has links to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, which we talked about. And so there's a lot more resources on our blog to take you on this journey, because like we mentioned, it's not just this information that we present. We are sort of flagging for you all the things you need to keep in mind, look out for, and become experts yourself in terms of what your kid is accessing.
And please, you can follow us on social media as well too. We're often trying to post helpful content and resources about this topic and about other topics related to raising kids. But you can, if you scan this here, oh my gosh, I'm losing my own words here at the end of the night. If you can scan this, take a picture with your phone. You can find us on Instagram, and we'll also post some of this information on there as well too.
Yeah. I'm very impressed we got through it actually in 50 minutes, because we both speak quite quickly, but at least this gives us a chance to answer some questions.